Calling the meeting to order. The time is 6:03. Director Beisel, could you please do attendance?
Carrie Tate. Here. Mike Reese. Here. Jessica Dressley. Here. Lisa Hedin.
Here.
Becky Beisel. Here. Stephanie Mum.
Present.
Brian Davis.
Here. All right, please stand and face the flag for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Next up, I need a motion to approve the agenda in the table file.
So move.
Second.
Any discussion on the agenda table file? All those in favor, say aye.
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 Those opposed? Motion passes. Next up, we have the approval of the minutes from the March 9th, 2022 special board meeting. Is there a motion to approve?
So move. Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. That brings us to recognition of visitors. Mr. McDowell?
That's yours.
Oh, I'm thinking about announcements and recognitions. I'm jumping the gun. I'm sorry. I apologize. I am the one that's supposed to be recognizing all our visitors. Thank you for all being here and participating in our process. Also, all those who are watching on HCTV and via Facebook. So thank you all for participating. And of course, as always, you can direct any questions to this board, myself, Dr. McDowell, anytime you have any questions. That being done, we now can move to announcements and recognitions. Sorry about that, Dr. McDowell.
All right, well, we've got a big night for recognition. So first I want to bring up our wrestling crew. Come on up.
Don't be shy.
Don't be shy.
Don't be shy. All the way up here, guys.
Come on up.
All the way up there where we can see you. There we go.
So I just want to read a couple things first here. So I'm going to steal a quote from Minnesota State High School League because we'll start with Skylar. Again, from Minnesota State High School League, in a milestone congruent with the celebratory journey to recognize the 50th birthday of Title IX, the Minnesota State High School League made history on Saturday, March 5th, 2022, with the first time state championship crowning of 12 female participants during the wrestling state tournament at the Excel Center in St. Paul. Title IX landmark federal legislation that created an equal opportunity for females was signed into law on June 23rd, 1972. And this is a big deal for Hastings because at the 132 weight class, Skylar Little Soldier from Hastings is a state champion. Congratulations. And also, next to Skylar, we have at the 106 weight class, Blake Beisel, who is also a state champion in wrestling this year for Hastings. So if memory serves me correctly, wrestlers typically don't say a lot, they do a lot. But what we'd like to do is really, as you've seen here in kind of the small introduction, is just recognize the fact that it's a big accomplishment just to go to state, but it's a huge accomplishment to be number one in the state, particularly at a weight class that you're at. So with that, I would offer my congratulations. I don't know if the coaches want to say anything, if the two of you would want to say anything, and if the board has any questions or comments.
I just want to say that I'm incredibly proud. I'm proud of you too. I think that's just a tremendous accomplishment. I got to follow along a little bit. I'll be honest, I am not really savvy with wrestling, but I tried very fast to get savvy with wrestling because I'm so proud of the accomplishments, and you guys have really done the city proud. So congratulations again. In particular, for Title IX, that's absolutely huge. Thanks for that. That's absolutely awesome. Just keep it going, and I know you guys are going to keep accomplishing great things. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Skylar, I just want to say one little thing. So my daughter, who's 10 years old, just this past summer attended your workshop. And yesterday when I told her, I said, did you know that Skylar won? And she goes, what? And she goes, well, I can't wait for this summer too. Hopefully she's going to be at the work session. So just as for you and the community, you are paving the way for the next generation, and great work, the two of you.
Thanks.
I'll speak. You both know I've known you since you were little. You've been workout partners since you're 5 years old. It's amazing watching you two grow up to be the adults that you've become, and you know how proud I am of both of you. So congratulations. Skylar, awesome job on being the first Hastings Wrestling state champ. Blake, congratulations.
Thank you.
All right, thank you so much for being here. Do you want to say anything? You're good?
No, you're good, huh? Thanks for being here, guys. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much, and
Congratulations again.
congratulations.
Good job.
So now we want to bring up representatives of our show choirs, because I think they are in the audience as well. All right. So I've got a little bit of an introduction here. Our two show choirs, Riverside Company and Dynamic Edition, just capped off an incredible competitive season. Our prep show choir, Dynamic Edition, is directed by Tatum Malum. They competed 3 times and were awarded a first runner-up, a best show band recognition, and 1 prep grand champion award. The varsity show choir, Riverside Company, directed by Luke Warren, assisted by Jen Fox, with band direction by Jake Bolkin, also completed their competition season. This year they competed 5 times against choirs from all over the Midwest. They had 2 runner-up finishes, 2 best band awards, 1 best choreography award, 4 best vocal awards, and 3 grand champion awards. So with that, I'd like to introduce representatives from our 2 show choirs and the amazing season that they've just completed.
Yeah, let me real quick. These are our Riverside officers. Can we hear okay? Is that good? These are our Riverside officers. This is Aiden Sorensen, Hope Davis, and Henry Eschman. And I just wanted to make sure that I acknowledge the incredible leadership of these young people, and the fact that, especially in Riverside, we have 54 singers and dancers. We have 20 band members, 8 crew members, a bevy of parent volunteers. Some of you have been a part of that. It truly is an activity that takes a village, and we're just so thankful to have been able to get back to the performance stage this year. And thanks in large part to all the students, but these 3 in particular who have been exemplary leaders all year long.
I'm always a big fan of hearing what's next. 'Cause I know you guys are moving on out of Hastings, so I'd be curious to hear what you're thinking of next. And congratulations. I think to come out of last year where you got to do 1 performance outdoors and then come back with the energy and the dynamics and the commitment and the connection is about the senior leadership, and it's about the administrative leadership of the group. So thank you very much.
All right, well, next year I'll be going to Iowa State and double majoring in viola and accounting. Super fun. I know. It's just, they just go really well together.
That's such a common double major. I hear that all the
I know.
time.
I've seen a lot of people, so I just think it'll be really easy.
Yeah, no problem.
But I'd also like to say thank you, because I know many people here, especially on the school board, have been big advocates for, continuing the music program and not making many changes to that. So thank you so much, guys.
Next year, I'm not sure where I'm going to school yet, but I plan on majoring in English or creative writing. So, yeah.
I'm also not 100% sure what I'm doing. I got accepted into the musical theater Bachelor of Fine Arts program at the University of Minnesota Duluth. So I'll either end up there or possibly at a school in New York City or Texas, but I was planning on studying drama or musical theater, something related to the music field. So like Aiden said, I also appreciate all the work that the board has done and just the community in supporting music in Hastings, because it's really the most important thing that I have done my entire career in this town.
I would like to say I got the privilege of going to a show choir event a few weeks ago, excuse me, and it literally blew my mind what you guys were able to do up there. I think I was exhausted just watching you all and what you're able to do in the costume changes and the constant motion and all of that. It was absolutely amazing, and I would encourage every single person to try to make it to a show choir event at some point. So great job.
All right, once again, congratulations, guys, and thanks for coming out tonight. Appreciate it. All right, those are our announcements and recognitions. We're going to move into our items for discussion, starting with policies. First reading on policy 206. Steph?
So with policy 206, if you were to open it up, I believe it's on page 1, 2, 3, 4, you'll see where we start making all of those changes. So this is for the public. This policy 206 is public participation in school board meeting, complaints about persons at school board meetings, and data privacy considerations. Just taking a look at my notes here. So if you have any questions about 206, I guess now or during the policy committee summary, we can discuss that too. But I know with 206, we did, one of the recommendations with, the privacy portion of it is making sure that we're not collecting addresses, names of the public, because that stays on record. So how do we do it and recognize individuals that want to speak to the board? So, coming up with like laminated numbers 1 through 5, and then we would call, okay, number 1, please, come on over and we can discuss this. We talked about, let's see, so striking portion, it's 6A6 and all of 9, and then striking 6C. Sorry, I'm toggling between pages here. You can see those modifications there, so kind of coinciding with the data privacy considerations. And I know that, I think it was even before the new board members you'd been seated in January, that there was a discussion about like, how do we do these listening sessions? How do we do public input? Is it, do we revert back to having public comment, where all of us are here and they can sit up there and we do it for 15 minutes. So that's something that I think we need to have a broader discussion about, but we wanted to tackle the privacy portion of it first. And then have a broader discussion about what public comment actually looks like. Yes, Lisa?
Yeah, I just wanted to say the reason for approaching the collection of data is driven by a piece of legislation that's currently going through the state legislature that would prohibit collection of that data. Now, there's been a friendly amendment that would allow you to collect the city that the person lives in to assure that if you were a district that's trying to prioritize constituents. That was not in place when we put this in. This is just about being ready to respond to an anticipated legislative shift. And the broader question about what the time, manner, and the time and manner of public engagement is, that's a separate question for a different time.
I guess, so when, I personally, I would like to have the discussion around the adding public comment back in. I think it's important from a trust aspect, even from an optics aspect, to have folks have the opportunity to address us all at once. So I guess, are we talking about doing that at our next working session, or what does the time frame look like on that conversation?
I believe, and I don't have my calendar up, but it would be at our policy meeting.
Okay, during the meeting. Mm-hmm. Okay.
And then we would bring back the recommendation and discuss it further with the board.
Part of a second reading at that point.
Well, we have a policy meeting before the next time, before it would come to a second reading. Mhm.
Okay,
I would expect that, yeah, well, it would start, because it's policy, it would start in a policy meeting to have that conversation. That's a much bigger shift than would show up in a second reading shift, quite honestly. I think what I hear Stephanie saying and what I would anticipate coming, because there's been no discussion about it at policy to this point. When this came up, the only discussion that was held and that was raised was regarding getting in alignment with anticipated state statutory requirements. So that's the shift. So it would need to come into policy and have a discussion and be revisited. I don't think it's just not a component of this discussion at this time.
Right.
But the process is policy, working session, and then come up.
Okay. So in reading through here, I did have some questions. One of the things that is changing is that it's a time for citizens for the listening session, I should clarify, is that you can talk to the board regarding a subject that is on the regular board agenda, and the or is not is struck. So I guess I was, right before the meeting, I was looking at MSBA's policy 206, and they have a section dedicated to on the agenda, and then they have an open format or open forum. So they, according to their recommendation, it allows for either on the agenda or not. I guess I'm wondering why we would go to this strict of a policy at this time.
Yep, and we can kind of speak to that too. So this is one of those policies that if you were to look from one district to the next, it is going to be vastly different. And it's really up to the particular board on how they want to manage public comment. So, you know, with the past board, that's just how we decided for the flow of the meetings to see if, and quite frankly, we didn't have anybody show up at public comments. So we're like, okay, let's do a listening session. We can condense the meeting, and it's still that opportunity for people to come in if they want to. And maybe we're at a time where we need to have that concern. But like, to your point too, is to make that modification within the next month. I think that's a pretty high expectation. Because it's not going to be as straightforward as maybe what you're thinking versus what I'm thinking versus what Lisa's thinking. So I think we need to, the recommendation is, okay, let's get past this privacy consideration, get that in there, and then move to the public comment portion of it and what that actual platform looks like. And then with the agenda piece, we did talk about this at the policy meeting, is that allowing individuals, because if there's something that's on the agenda, if the public wants to speak to that before we go to a vote, we want them to have a priority, versus somebody who is just coming in to talk about, I don't know, sports and, you know, what's going on within Hastings. So that's another consideration. And I think that we need to, as a policy committee and then as a board, talk about that a little bit further on how do we want to prioritize public comment, because I think it's really important that if there's an agenda item, that individuals can speak to us before we take a vote on it.
And I agree. I totally agree with that approach. I guess I know tonight nobody came to do the listening session, so priority doesn't really matter there, being on the agenda or not. So I guess in general, I oppose not being able to allow or not being able to allow folks to speak in the listening sessions to something that's not on the agenda.
So would you maybe recommend, I'm just trying to understand and how this would actually look in the policy, a recommendation that it would be, you know, maybe individuals that want to speak about an agenda item would get priority at a listening session or public comment session, and then anybody else would go thereafter? Like if say, for example, we do have 7 people, you know, who... It may happen. It's happened twice. So, but it can happen. So maybe that's what it looks like.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think it should be open for either or, and then yes, the priority would be agenda items to make sure that we hear that side of things on the agenda items for sure. And then there was just one other, sorry.
Okay, just to follow on to that though, then the thing, and this is for note-taking purposes to remember for policy, is right now we're striking the requirement that people provide all of their personal data, including the topic about which they want to speak. And if we're going to start getting into prioritization, I would want to expand that conversation, and it might be something beyond a single policy meeting. So this might not be able to come back for quite a while, is prioritizing agenda items and local constituents, which again it's the how-to, right? It's the how do you do that. But I'm going to prioritize, I would prefer to prioritize somebody who's paying local property taxes over somebody who's paying generally federal taxes that wants to speak on an agenda item. So I think we may have to dig into that a little bit more if we're going to start a prioritization process, which just slows the whole thing down, quite honestly, because it's just a more complex conversation.
Okay. The other thing that I was wondering about, the other thing that is struck is it's 6C. No board action at the same meeting. Again, I was looking at MSBA, and that actually is a recommendation from them, that we wouldn't vote on something if it was being brought up by the public for a first time that night. So I was curious about why we would remove that when it's an MSBA recommendation.
Well, to Stephanie's point, the MSBA policy here, or policy template is not consistently used by any stretch of the imagination. People use very, very different policies and how they approach this. It links to the conversation we just had, right? If we're speaking to an agenda item, it's an item we intend to take action on. So that's why you would remove it, because we intend to take action on it.
So, okay, so we're saying that even if the public is bringing something to our attention for the first time, we would still go forward with the vote? I mean, of course, we can always make a motion to...
No, if we have an agenda item,
yeah,
they're not going to bring it to us for the first time because it's already on the agenda. So it's linked so that if you're going to say the conversation will be related to items on the agenda, it will not be something the public brings to our attention for the first time.
Right.
So then you don't need it in there.
Right.
That's why I'm saying it's linked to the previous conversation.
Yep. Okay.
Right, if I might, I think that, and correct me if I'm wrong, Carrie, but I think where we're going with this is, because I do want to direct the policy committee to really try to look at their agenda, figure out how to take this up sooner rather than later, but I think that what Carrie's indicating is that if we did allow, let's say that there are 6 people to sign up, and 2 of the people bring up something that's not on the agenda because there was nobody else with agenda items, so there was space left. If that were the way it was set up, those folks would be bringing up something on the agenda for the first time versus the others where it was already on the agenda and could have action taken on it. Is that where we're going, that it could be split potentially?
Yes.
Okay, so I get where she's going. So it would depend on how it's written, how we go at it, because if indeed people were allowed to speak on something non-agenda related for that night, we wouldn't be able to take action on that night. So I get that point.
Yeah, and I don't disagree with you, but I'm saying that this came through policy, and the conversation was about strip out the privacy data requests because we cannot protect that as private data, and prioritize to the point of excluding non-agenda items, because we can be reached, as we all know, many, many ways on many, many topics, many, many times. So the purpose of the listening session is to create an opportunity for the public to engage on an agenda item which we are likely to take action on. This is their last chance to come in prior to action. So to be consistent throughout the document with that as the premise, then you remove 6C. If you don't have that as the premise, which is a broader discussion, then you may, as part of that discussion, decide that you want to have something that limits action. But to this premise, it was, we will hear from the public on agenda items. So therefore, this was extraneous and didn't need to be included.
You know, I get that. I get that completely, that this is really about the data privacy component of it. And then, you know, we'll work through this and then, you know, be able to pick up the other pieces that we're looking at in terms of creating a different forum for public comment.
Well, I had something to kind of add on to what Carrie was saying is on this, it's saying that it has to be a regular board agenda. What about our work sessions? What if somebody heard that and wanted to talk about that? You're saying that they can't bring that up? So that's kind of just on Carrie's thing, is that, let's say we talked about it at a working session or whatever the case is, and they want to bring it up, or even if it was something that was 2 months ago, it's not on our current agenda, but it was something that we discussed. And so, I mean, I get that it's a bigger discussion and I'm not looking for an answer. I just wanted to add on to that. And then just to clarify on the 6B4, the complaints that are unresolved, maybe brought before the school board. I just thought that you'd maybe want to put in the words notifying all members instead of just notifying the school board in writing, because they might just take that as one person and they did it. So I guess just maybe add that verbiage. You don't have to, it's just a recommendation there. And that's all I had.
Which sentence?
Or, oh, well, it's listed as,
Or is it 6?
on the school board, listen, under complaints, yep, number 4 right there. Yep, that one.
Okay.
So whatever number that is.
It's 6B4.
Okay. Because it looks like 6 is continued for the penalties, when that should be a 7, right, then? Yes. Okay.
I have a question. Has this bill passed yet that we were changing the verbiage for?
It's in committee, but it's in both houses. So it's one of the few that's actually anticipated to pass, which means it'll be probably in May. I think, I know you were on the Coffee and Conversation. I don't know if you guys are on the legislative update, but it was, you know, basically Speaker Hortman said, you know, we start passing things when stuff starts blooming. So that hasn't happened yet, but it will be shortly.
Thank you.
That was good discussion. Is there anything else on this? This, as again, was just a first reading, but is there anything else on this?
I do have one more thing.
Sure.
So then I would assume that we would also have to update the listening session, what is it, 206.1? That'll also have to be done during the next committee meeting, correct?
Or thereafter, yeah. Whenever we have a solid foundation of what that actually looks like, absolutely.
Once we have a sense of what direction 206 is going to go.
Thank you.
Yes, I definitely think this is important. I want to make sure the public gets to weigh in, and well, you guys are, you know, policy will be busy. So what's new? I was going to say it was always busy when I was on it too, so there you go. Anything else on this? Okay, that's great. Let's move it forward then, since that was just a first reading. We have a second reading on policy 6A-II-1, which is policy 213 school board committee modifications that were made. And that is a second reading that can be moved to an action item tonight if we so desire. And we're back to Director Malm.
We made the modifications that were recommended at the February board meeting. So if you take a look at the policy, there's the strike-throughs in 2B and then 3A. So now it reads, the school board appoints standing committees at the school board organizational meeting held in January every year.
I'm sorry, Steph, where is that? On 2B? Oh, 3.
Well, yeah, there's 2B and then 3A.
Yeah, I was looking at the 2B modification, sorry. Okay.
Pending your questions or feedback.
What's the difference in the color? Is it just version 1 versus version 2 in the strikeouts?
Who actually did the strike through?
Oh. You know these Google Docs, everybody gets assigned a color. You don't get to pick your color, it just gives you a color. All right. right, with these adjustments, I am going to look for a motion to move this to an action item.
So moved.
Second.
Any further discussion on this? All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? All right, we'll move this to an action item. We're going to move to administrative reports, and we will start with the superintendent's report.
All right, I've got a short report tonight, but some, I think, important information. We're set to hold the first round of high school principal interviews next week on Tuesday. We've had 18 applicants, so we've got a good pool to choose from. We'll hold second and third round of interviews on Tuesday, April 5th. We've got 2 committees that are organized, made up of students, parents, and staff, and then a third committee that's of administration. So there'll be a fairly significant vetting process to get us to a final decision there. As I shared in the latest Raider update, we've published a bond website that everybody can take a look at. It shows all the great things that have been accomplished so far due to the community's commitment and support to our schools, our students, and our staff from that 2017 bond. While we have future projects listed there as well, we'll be updating that as we move along. The intent is to provide a by-site update that has pictures as things get done. But as we move into the last phase, we thought it was important to start really showing everybody exactly what has happened with those dollars that were given by the community to the schools. As you're aware from our recognition earlier, winter sports season has closed and it was extremely successful for our Raiders. We were up in our participation levels for both our male and female athletes. We had 296 students participating in 13 sports that we offer. We had 5 all-state individual, 21 state participants, 2 team section champions, 2 individual section champions, and 2 state champions. In addition, our athletes held a combined 3.35 GPA. And then on the coaching front, Tim Hannenberg was named the Section 3 AAA Wrestling Coach of the Year. Josh McClay was named the 3 AAA Assistant Coach of the Year, and Trent Hansen has been named as the Minnesota State High School League 1AA Athletic Director of the Year. So very successful winter sports season all around for our athletes. So that's great news and great work on everyone's part. And finally, I just want to note we've been partnering with the United Way of Hastings and the Police Department of Hastings, as well as Dakota County, including Dakota County Sheriff's Department, and many other local groups to organize an upcoming educational series on opioids, overdoses, and fentanyl poisonings. On Tuesday, April 26th, there'll be a documentary called Dead on Arrival that will be shown at the middle school auditorium, and that'll be followed by a panel discussion and resource booths for families, parents, students. On Tuesday, May 3rd, again at the Hastings Middle School Auditorium, there will be an educational session held on opioids and fentanyl, what they are, what are the dangers, fentanyl poisoning, what is Narcan, addiction, treatment, all of that kind of information. And then on Tuesday, May 5th, in the high school auditorium, there will be a interactive parent and teen event called Top Secret. And this is a simulation of a teen's bedroom and what gets hidden in plain sight. So an opportunity for parents and the community to understand when they have a student or a child that is struggling with any type of drug addiction, here's where things oftentimes get hidden. So additional resources will also be available after all 3 of these. They're all currently scheduled to take place at 6:30 p.m. and there'll be more information that gets put out. But this has been a project that we've been working on, I think, for the last 3 or 4 months, and is really a joint effort with multiple entities of the community. So hopefully it'll be something that we can really get some good information out to families and help support those that we need to help support through some of these difficult times. So with that, I'll open it up to questions, but that's what I have for tonight.
I think I heard you say 6:30 for all of those. Are there any plans or anything to show those types of things during the school day as well, or other? I mean, I assume there's other programs or.
Yeah, not at this time. What we've tried to do is really get with this group, really focus on how can we help support both students and parents jointly with this. I think with some of the legislation that might be coming through, I know that Senator Bingham has a piece of legislation right now that I think is headed to committee that speaks directly to what schools should be presenting as part of their ongoing curricular things. So I think more of that will be coming, but we already do have through Helping Kids Succeed, through our health programs, through our FACS programs, through the health curriculum at the high school, at least cycles of these conversations that kids are being exposed to as well.
Thank you.
All right, let's move. Again, that's fantastic. I'm glad to see we're addressing that so directly. Let's move on to the Building Construction Fund project update.
All right, we'll turn that over to Jen Subert.
Yes, Ms. Subert.
Thanks. So just a quick reminder that the Building Construction Fund accounts for the money that the district received from the voter-approved bonds for school renovations and improvements. There have been a few updates since last month's report. The approved transfer from the Hastings High School privacy improvements to the Hastings Middle School storage building project has been recorded. There are 5 projects that have been moved to in process, and they are the middle school track, the high school lighting, the high school parking lot improvement, Pinecrest exterior lighting, and the high school lecture hall. There are 2 bids that are on the agenda for later this evening to be approved, and they are the high school locker room privacy project as well as the ALC renovation. And then just a quick reminder that the board had previously determined that leftover funds from projects coming in under budget would be allocated towards technology improvements. We continue to track those available funds, and if we get to a point that there's more funds available than what is needed for technology, we can look at identifying additional needs throughout the buildings. There was another project that was kind of next on the list that was below the line, and that was the exterior building signs. So that is something that would need board approval if we get to that point. But at this point, we're just kind of continuing to watch that and track it. And then Sal Bagley from Wold Architects and Engineers is also here tonight, and we plan on sharing a little bit of additional information about the ALC renovation project. While she kind of gets ready, I'll share a little bit of history on the project. So we currently have approximately 30 students that attend the Hastings ALC. We lease space from the city of Hastings for about $34,000 per year for that space, and it's about 3,400 square feet. We are at maximum occupancy for that space, so we've had our students on a waiting list to join the ALC. There's approximately 30 to 40 more of Hastings students that attend DECALS, so the Dakota County Area Learning School through Intermediate School District 917. And then we pay 917 approximately $100,000 to $150,000 per year, depending on the number of students enrolled in that program. The high school was built for about 2,000 students, and we currently have approximately 1,400. So the C-Pod at the high school was identified as an open space that could be renovated to become the ALC. It's approximately double the square footage of what they currently have in the leased space. So we would be able to serve more of our students by moving the ALC there. And then the high school and ALCs also share staff, so there's some efficiencies with both of those being in the same building. Our process for this ALC renovation is the ALC identified a group of about 8 students that became kind of part of the planning and the ALC staff. And they met with myself and Bob, as well as Sal in the current C-Pod, and they kind of helped identify what their needs, wants, priorities would be in a new space. I think some of you guys have heard a lot of this before, but as far as the students go, we heard a lot about a separate entrance being important. For some students, the ability to remain separated from the high school, but then for other students, the ability to also take classes in the high school. Some flexible spaces, having a different feel than the high school, some dimmable lights, a different bell schedule. From the staff, we really heard, breakout rooms were important for classrooms, that they had their own bathrooms, that they had a big enough common space where they could have all the students together, a small kitchenette. The meals really come from the high school kitchen, but they are served in the ALC, and then also some students bring meals from home. And then just the visibility of the space for staff, as well as just some small meeting spaces. So all of their ideas and priorities led to the initial design of the new space. The initial design was then shared with the ALC staff, and we received a little bit of feedback and made a few revisions. And then we've also shared this design with all of the ALC students and got some of their feedback. So I'll turn it over to Sal, and you can walk us through the design plans.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for having me this evening. I assume I can control here. Wonderful. So as Jen stated, it is about just under 7,000 square feet. So that is about exactly double the amount of space they have today. So that's a huge improvement. The main scope items are having 4 general education classrooms or flexible classrooms. There is one space that's very specifically designed for art and science. So to be, messier and have water access, things of that nature. And then administrative spaces and those flex rooms. So it is later on the agenda tonight to approve award of bids. We did have a bid opening already, and we can talk about that if you'd like. But the intent would be to have construction yet this summer, so that for fall of 2022, the ALC would open in its new location. Here's a floor plan diagram. So just to orient everyone, just off of to the left-hand side of the drawing, I probably can't point on laser on TV, but you can see some very, very small boxes. Those are the locker bay. So that's the locker bay right outside the C-pod there. So there's 2 sets of doors that lead into the C-pod today. So the intent is to keep one of those for access. We do have to have one of those for fire access, but to close the other one off. And you can see there's a room there labeled staff room. That's where the kitchenette is planned to be, so that meals can be delivered from the high school, has a delivery door, and then there's a counter out to the rest of the commons. So that's kind of what the interface with the rest of the building looks like. The student experience was very specifically designed around the idea of having a dedicated main entry. So you can see in the upper right-hand corner of the drawing, we actually went out on site and toured the space with students and staff, and they identified that as being their preferred entrance for a variety of reasons. There was a nice green space right outside. There's kind of a gathering space. There's available dedicated parking very nearby. And I think most importantly, it was out of sight of the main high school entry. And that was a really top criteria for some students, that they really felt like they were going to a different program than the high school, right? Because that's why they are at the ALC. So that would be the main entrance. There'd be some security improvements in that area, and then we'd come into the reception space. And you can see a couple terms on the floor plan. We worked on those with the students. They had a strong criteria for us that this should feel different than the rest of the high school and maybe not look like a high school at all. And so we worked with them on some concepts. So you can see the commons is called the lodge in the backyard. I'll show you some views of that. We've got a space for a reception right when we come in. Like I said, similar security process to what's been enhanced at other schools. And that really opens up into that commons area. Just to orient you, if you've been in those spaces or are familiar with the high school floor plan, right now there's a few classrooms on the north side of this drawing and a few classrooms on the south side. And so there's renovation to really turn the south side of the whole pod into 4 classrooms that are more appropriately sized for the ALC. So it's 3 classrooms today, and we're turning it into 4. And then on the north side, taking those 3 classrooms and creating the lab. So that's that art/science space. Just below that is 3 unisex bathrooms. So right now they only have 2, and there's long lines sometimes. So they asked for a 3rd restroom, especially if more people are going to be there. And then you can see a series of spaces called office/flex. So there's a whole variety of supports that come to the ALC, whether that be psychologist or social worker or truancy or mental health or a whole variety of people that are not there all of the time. So they don't need a dedicated office that sits empty all day, but they do need enclosed private spaces to have meetings with students and families. So there's a couple of those. The intent is to use the one in the upper right-hand corner as a nursing space when needed. So again, there's not a full-time nurse, but if there's nursing needs, they need to have a space with a cot, what have you. And then right below that, you can see there's a room marked office that's right to the left of the main entrance. That's the intended director office location. You know, some of the feedback we got from Mr. Levos was about visibility out to the commons. So there's a couple strategically located windows in his office so that he can see out to the backyard and to the lodge, and that reception can see if he's had someone in his office or not. So that's really kind of the part. Oh, and I shouldn't skip over. There's a teacher planning area. So you can see in the bottom right-hand corner of the drawing, there actually already exists a room. So we're just putting it to work by having landing pads for all of the teachers, space for a small copier, and a little bit of storage for things like paper, etc. And again, this is a large improvement over the amount of space they have today. We got to go present this to students in their current space today, and I think there was a lot of excitement. We did show them some 3D views that we've been working on with the administration. So if you're not a floor plan reader and you're more of a 3D view reader, this is an axonometric view. So it's like we peeled the ceiling and the roof off and we're kind of looking down into it like a dollhouse is somehow how I would describe it. So you can see to orient you the main entry on the right-hand side there. So there's that door to the outside, which you would come through that stairwell and go to the reception desk. Then where all of those tables are shown in the center is the main common space. So they have a lot of meetings there and speakers, would also double as a dining space. Then on the north-hand side, or kind of the upper right-hand part of the drawing, you can see all of those offices and flexible rooms, drop-in spaces, conference rooms. The lab at the top of the screen, those 3 small boxes just below the lab are those single-use restrooms. Then we've got that staff room / kitchenette space where lunches will be brought to, and then finally we've got our 4 classrooms on the south side. But this starts to show you some of the detail, what we went through with both staff and students about how much storage should be in every room, and should the door swing in or out, and do we need marker boards, and where should monitors be, and where is student storage, and so all that type of detail was gathered in a series of input meetings with, mostly with the staff, but we did get student input along the way. When it comes to aesthetics, the students and staff had a lot of interesting ideas for us. Like I said, they kind of give us the charge or the challenge of that it should have a very different feel from the rest of the high school, and they identify the rest of the high school as sometimes having an institutional feel, right? And they're really looking for a different type of experience. That's the entire intent behind an alternative experience. And so this is a view, and if you want to orient yourself, there's floor plans in the bottom left-hand corner of the slide with a little arrow pointing, like a camera view. But we are standing just inside the door. So the door to the outside would be right behind us, or the stairwell. And right in front of us is the intended reception desk area. So there's an opportunity for some branding. Exactly what that says remains to be determined. But this is where students could check in, visitors could check in, what have you. That's a position they have. And then you can start to see a little bit into the lodge, which is really the main part of the commons on the right-hand side. Those colored stripes that you can see in the background are not actually paint, but they are a tackable wall surface. So there was a lot of discussion about, and actually if you've been to the ALC, they really celebrate student work and have kind of taken over every square inch with hanging projects up and things like that. So tried to be intentional about that. So there's a lot of tackable student work surface throughout the design. You can also see plans for a monitor on the wall there for, presentations, but also like scrolling announcements and things of that nature. I should probably pause and say final furniture selections have not been made, so this exact chair or this exact table might not be what shows up. We're still finalizing those details. That's all a part of the project budget, but I think furniture helps people understand scale, and also, this shows the intent, but that exact chair remains to be seen. Now we are standing with the reception desk kind of right at our left. It's like we're kind of standing at the desk looking towards the rest of that common space. There's an intent to add some wood features to the space to warm it up. Actually, some of the ideas students brainstormed for us were things like a camp or a cabin, or some features that might remind them of home. And obviously we're trying to strike that balance between maybe not going into kitsch or cheesy, but bringing in the warmth of some of the features that they the common thread of all of those examples they gave us. So this is really meant to be a large open gathering space, larger than the one they have today, and that is heavily used by their programming. Next slide, now we're standing kind of in the middle of the lodge and we're looking toward the area that the students helped brainstorm the idea of called the backyard. It's a space that students are allowed to use when they've completed their work, and so it's kind of a, obviously at the ALC, students are each on their own place in their journey that, and a lot of their work is actually individual. And so sometimes they can come to a space like that to do their work. And when they finish it, it's used as an acknowledgement of having done my work. And then you can see all of the doors to those flexible offices in the background as well. So each one of those has a small piece of glass next to it, so you can see if it's occupied or not. And then on the very back left of the image would be the door to the art/science lab. And then kind of just off camera or just out of view would be the director office on the right-hand side. I think my next view goes into that backyard space. So really it's meant to just be an extension of the common space that's a slightly different look and feel. So it's not necessarily tables and chairs, but more of that flexible furniture. I know there's been a big investment in that district-wide, even with the bond referendum. Defining the space with just a little bit of different color in the floor, and then the ceiling features are actually hanging acoustic features to try to make sure it's a quiet space. And then again, we can see all of the doors to those offices obliquely on our right, and then now the art/science door is at the back, and you can kind of see through the door into that space. Which we are now going into. So now we are in that art/science room. We called it the lab with the group, and we met with both art and science teachers to kind of design the perfect room to address both needs, because they don't have a full-time equivalent of either. So you can see there's a intent to have a countertop at the back of the room, or the south part of the room, that's got upper and lower storage. There's sinks there. On the left-hand side of this image, you can see an intent to have some student project storage, mostly for art, but science had some reason to have some student storage slots as well. And then mostly flexible furniture. So you can see there's intended to be mobiles, table and chairs in here. And then in the very, very bottom right corner of the image, you can see the teacher demo station, which they actually requested to be mobile. So most of the high school has fixed demo stations in the science room, and they actually asked that it could be on wheels just for enhanced flexibility of the room. And then maybe last but not least, hard surface floor. Obviously there's water in the room, and then access to additional power from the ceiling. So some cord reels that could come down for microscopes or devices or what have you. So now we're going to go kind of to the other half of the space. So we're standing in the middle of the commons or the lodge looking towards the classrooms. So if you were imagining you actually have a wall about here right now, then you would go into 3 classrooms. So again, we're kind of turning the classrooms 90 degrees to get 4 of them. And that window in the background would actually look out towards the rest of the site. And in this area is where the teachers and staff felt was appropriate to include student storage. And so it kind of built into that hallway is a series of student cubbies, and those have been designed with power in them so that devices can actually charge while they're in the cubbies, because that's a big challenge today. So there's a series of cubbies there. That's what you can see on either side there. They're kind of built into the thickness of the wall, trying to be efficient with space. And we've taken one more step down that hallway. So again, you can see the little snippet of the cubbies on the right, and then we're looking at the entrance into 2 of the classrooms here. So on the classroom that's more on the left-hand side, you can see some tables and chairs. They do prefer 2-person tables as their intent. And then on the right-hand side, you can see what a typical teaching wall looks like, which is the intent to have a display in the center with a magnetic marker board on either side. And then last but not least, we've got towards the window space there's another kind of flexible breakout space or individual or small group space kind of right outside the classroom. And then one last view inside one of the classrooms proper. So there's a little bit of built-in storage in each room. There's a tall wardrobe cabinet, which is on the right-hand side, a small amount of cabinet with some upper and lower storage, and then some open shelving, mostly for things like classroom library or totes, things like that. So things the teachers might need to store. And that is what we have to present to you tonight. So we'd love to take any questions on design or process. And then I think probably later we might talk about bid day, but yeah.
Well, I don't really have a question. I'm just thinking I can't wait to tour it. That's going to be really, really neat. It looks like a great space for them. The fact that the double space is doubled is fantastic. I mean, eventually we'll start to identify savings over the fact that we're not spending $34,000 on half the space. So it's just exciting to see.
Thank you. I think the students and staff are excited as well.
Oh, sorry, Mike, I apologize.
Is there any like actual lockers? Because they said cubbies, so is it just open face kind of thing? And
Correct.
There's no personal like locks for them to put a bag or whatever they might need?
No, their preference was for it to be open, and that's how they operate today. So that was an option. We could have done full-size lockers or what have you, but they preferred the cubby methodology. Sounds like that's a system they've worked out. And there's a lot of available lockers in the high school, too.
Kids don't use lockers. It's fascinating. They don't wear jackets.
And we did hear a lot from some students who the benefit of being located here helped them with before or after school activities, or like was already mentioned, maybe taking a class that the ALC doesn't have critical mass for. So maintaining that one connection point was important to some of them, while keeping it kind of out of mind for those who didn't want to see it. That was a balance to strike.
Well, thank you. Appreciate that.
Thank you for the time.
Stick around. We may get back to you.
I will. Thank you.
Thanks. Okay, with that, let's move to our report on student enrollment.
Just a quick update. So there was a decrease of about 10 students from February 1st. All those students were within the high school. We do still remain on track, though, with the budgeted ADMs.
Can I just add something there?
Say again?
If I can, one of the things we've been talking about just with student enrollment is, we give this student enrollment report every month. There isn't a lot that changes month to month. And if my understanding is correctly, this is a report that came in 2019 that started to show up on a month-to-month basis like this as part of an administrative report. So it hasn't been around that long. Why I'm bringing it up is I'd like us to consider at some point that the numbers that we have for student enrollment, the significant points are October 1, of course, because that's what we use to formulate off of. And then between then and the end of the school year. In between there, we don't see month to month a ton of changes. And so while it might be good to continue to always have an updated enrollment piece on the board agenda, just so that it's there for if people want to see it month to month, I don't know that there's a ton of value that we provide the board by having Jen say, here's what we lost 3 kids this month, we gained 3 kids this month. That's just my thought on it as we move forward. Like I said, my understanding is it's something that came along in the 2019 year. It didn't happen before that. So I'd recommend we do it differently. I don't think we need to have Jen reporting out on student enrollment every month.
Could we do semesters instead? That would be just first.
Yeah, we can.
And so that'd be 3 times basically a year?
I think the report out that we got in at the work session, which was like an annual data point with trend analysis, was a valuable in terms of being able to visualize the general direction things were going and where those things were at. So I would support getting an annual update, and then when we hear budget adjustments, so whether it's we move from adopted to recommended or whatever the case might be, that there's an statement about what, if any, student enrollments were embedded in the budget revision.
And as we would move through it, understand that we're looking at it every month. And Jen's got a very sophisticated Excel sheet that we plug in so that if there was something that came up as an anomaly, it's going to be related to budget anyway. So it's going to make its way to the board because we're going to want you to know about it because we're probably going to be needing you to make a decision about something. So just to be clear about that, it has nothing to do with whether we're watching it or not. It's just, I don't know that we'd need this as a every month report.
I'd like Mike's idea about maybe each semester. That's not bad. I mean, you're talking about literally each semester and then an annual readout. Hey, here's how we did for the year. And that way we have like a feel for, if you're going to see something dramatic, it would probably be more over the course of a semester than obviously a month. That's where you would see it more likely than not. You definitely wouldn't see it month to month, so I tend to agree with you there. But I would be willing to look at semester for sure.
I was thinking, oh, go ahead. I was thinking along the same lines, beginning, middle, end of the school year.
Lisa?
I was gonna say, I mean, I'm fine with that. I'm fine looking at this every month too. It's interesting sometimes. But I was gonna say, maybe we would ask, given that you've raised that maybe this isn't the most valuable way to present it, that we hear at the work session, the administration propose a way that says, this is how we think it would be valuable. This is how we can show you something. And then hear from Jen and Bob at a work session and then start incorporating it, because they would know when it's valuable for us to see it.
I think that's a really fair point, and if we did it like kind of the way that Mike and Steph kind of laid it out in these thirds or whatever, then you'd also maybe be looking a little bit more robustly, like trend. How are we trending? What does it look like relative to last year? Then you can actually see probably some data points in there, because it'd be a little less often.
Right, and I'm not saying less often, more often, whatever. I'm saying Jen and Bob might have a good idea of how to present it and what that looks like, knowing the level at which we would want to see it. So that might be 3 times a year, it might be once, it might be twice. I would like to hear a recommendation for our administration.
And we can do that. And I think what we'll do, if it's okay with, unless someone has an objection to it, what we would do is we'll just keep putting this file in here until we make a change. We won't speak to it. That way the information doesn't go away until we've made some official change as a board. All right, thanks.
That moves us up to policy committee. So Steph, you're back on.
We met on March 1st. Those in attendance were Jessica, Lisa, myself, Superintendent McDowell, and Becky Garcia. So the first topic of discussion was that we needed to come up with a plan to ensure, like an agenda for the policy committee, to ensure that we have the appropriate individuals at the meetings at the right time. So this means, like, for example, Rachel is working on policy 600. So when do we want to get an update from her? When do we want to get an update from Kathy on maybe some of the HR policies? So just forecasting a little bit better about what that actually looks like, so that those individuals know when they need to come to the policy committee and speak to us about the policies that they're working on. Policy 530, which is immunizations, we're going to be reviewing this policy in April. So it's one of the more outdated policies that we have, and it's just to make sure that it's in line with MSBA's recommendation. And this is, it is just strictly the MSBA recommendation. And Jessica, do you recall, was that MSBA recommended policy in 2017, and ours is what, 2012, I want to say?
2006.
2000, yeah, so it's really old. All right. So we'll just be making, more than likely, I anticipate just bringing back the MSBA recommended policy for that. But we'll be discussing it at April's board. You'll see something, I believe, on the agenda today regarding policy 403. Policy 403 and 540 are the same policies. So looking at eliminating those, that is the disproportionate enrollment policy, counseling, pre-career, and technical programs. We think, and this is before all of our time, this policy came about when was it like a tech? It was, yeah, an autos class, and having boys in one class, girls in one class, and so just ensuring that we had that. We don't need that anymore. So just proposing that we get rid of 403 and 540 altogether. We discussed policy 213 and policy 206 already. And then one topic that was brought up was the high school grading. So we wanted to bring it to the board and see, where do you guys sit on, is this a board priority. So we're going to have a new principal hopefully soon. And that may be something that they want to start tackling. It is identified as something that needs to be looked at or at least audited. And then, do we make modifications to how we grade at the high school? So, but pending your questions and comments about that, we do have our next policy meeting is on April 7th. We'll be reviewing a lot of the 600 policies and then 903, 903A, and then 206 with the recommended changes.
Does anybody have anything to follow up with Stephanie?
So what would be entailed with the grading changes?
So a lot would be entailed with grading. So grading, when a district starts talking about grading changes, there's a couple different things that happen. One's at the policy level. So the board needs to ultimately approve the what and how we're grading. However, what ends up happening is, in this case, the high school, if the board says, yes, we're interested in making that a priority, then essentially what the board is saying is, administration, Rachel, we need you to work with the high school and the high school team, because there's also grading is something that has to be a very large and deep discussion with the staff at the high school along the way to really work through that. And so it would be kind of a hurry up, yes, this is what we want as a priority, and then it would slow way down as Rachel and the high school principal and the leadership team and the staff started working through what does this mean? What do grades mean? I mean, they would go back to all those kind of questions about really what's best practice, what's not best practice, what has changed, what hasn't changed, what needs to stay because we're a high school and we have kids going to colleges that need GPAs, what all of that stuff. Once that's done, then that would come back to the board as a recommendation of here's what we've looked at, here's what we've done. I would think that grading would be something that would end up, once the high school staff would be done with it, it would come to at least one, if not two work sessions, so that you could have high school staff there, you as a board there, and really have them be able to answer some of the specific, like why did you go this route? Why are you thinking this? Before it even came to the board for a first reading. It's a pretty lengthy process. But in order to start, the board needs to say, yeah, we want this to be a priority.
So one other question, was there something that triggered this as needing to be a priority? Or is this just kind of something that happens over several years or something?
It's something that has not been revisited, I would say, officially for quite some time with consistency. At least to the best of my knowledge. I think it's a topic that has been discussed, but it really hasn't had as a district, as a board, we want you to take this on again. I don't know when the last time it was officially done. But there have been some changes. There's been some significant best practices changes out there with regard to how we grade students, what that grade in that grade book actually stands for, and what are no longer acceptable things to be incorporating into a student's grade. All of that kind of stuff, that's changed over time. And so it really has to do with answering that question when a parent gets that report card, when a kid sees that report card, what is it communicating? And is it communicating accurately what that student's ability is in their work towards the standards of that class? If you peel back all the layers.
Thank you.
Is that something that is trying to get pushed for next year then, the fall, or?
I think we'd work through it starting next year if we did it between now and next year.
That's mostly what I was saying.
Yeah.
You have, 2 months?
Yeah. It's definitely not a topic you can rush because my experience with it is that no different than any one of us, teachers all are in different places with this depending upon the grade level and so it takes a long time, and it's usually a 3 steps forward, 2 steps back, 3 steps forward. and needs to be done well, so that you end up with a product that and process that everybody can get behind.
Anything else on this piece for Stephanie or Dr. McDowell? Okay, then we will move to a Finance Committee report, which would be Ms. Hadid.
Thank you, Mr. Davis.
You got it.
I appreciate it. We met on the 8th of March. Of course, I scrolled down past the date of the minutes. Finance Committee meeting met on the 8th of March. We had representatives from Ehlers, which is our new financial advising company, come in and present it. It was really just a really clear, powerful presentation. I felt like it really made me feel good about going forward with them. They introduced themselves, shared a detailed evaluation of the Hastings tax base with a brief tutorial about equalization, which quite honestly I could go through every single year, and in about 10 years there's an outside chance that I would kind of understand it. So I thought that was really valuable. Summary of the district's operating levies, and then they've also discussed the status of the general education formula allowance from 2003 up to the proposed 2023, and demonstrated that the underfunding of special education really is a primary reason that a lot of districts have had to take on local levies. That and the fact that the general education fund is not keeping up with inflation. Those are kind of the two big drivers, but they talked about the similarity of many of those dollar values. Because Ehlers does serve as the primary municipal advisor for over 65% of the Minnesota districts and all of the other districts in Dakota County, they were really able to provide us some nice, clear comparisons to both our levy levels as well as our district's tax base strength relative to adjacent districts. So it was I thought, a really good introduction, and I look forward to having their support as we go forward. Then Jen Subert reviewed the assumptions that she's using to build the 2023 budget, 2022 to 2023 budget. Assumptions covered things like enrollment projections, which I now see I typoed in the minutes, general education review, special education funding review, compensatory district fees, staffing, all of those things that we've covered. And Jen has built those using both historical trends, projection models, and our district auditor has been consulted to give a second look and assure that the assumptions are within the range of reasonable, and that's all been good. So we'll see that as a board coming forward, the adopted budget in a future action, but it was a good base. And then because we've had a number of questions raised at the last few board meetings regarding bills payable, and it's kind of come out of consent and there's been specific questions, Jen did share with committee members the spreadsheet that she provides to the auditor's company auditing report, showing the internal controls that are in place over billing practices. One of the things that I found really valuable, I had an opportunity to attend MSBA's officer training, and we had a breakout for treasurers, was really to see the range of districts that exist in the state. There's a representative from Anoka Hennepin there, and they have a $500 million budget or something like that. And then districts where the treasurer quite honestly went in and signed the checks. It was that small. It was an hour-long activity that was done, maybe once a month. It was just that small. And it really showed the degree to which the power of your internal control system is valuable. And we have sufficient staff to have a robust, I think everybody's really pushed and is working probably at 110% workload, but we have sufficient staff to have those checks and balances in place, and there's a nice spreadsheet provided identifying that. We have now set the time for our next meeting is going to be on May 10th. Starting a little bit earlier because yet again we ran out of time before I had to go work in the lunchroom. So we're gonna try 8:30 and see if that gets us done in time. We expect to focus on review of the adopted budget, which we'll have at least had an initial presentation to the board at that point, but we can look at it. And then survey results from the community survey regarding levy renewal willingness. And then we would anticipate after that there'll be an October meeting to cover at that time, prior year financial results, which is the year we're currently experiencing, and get a sense of an enrollment update. And to, kind of bend off of that previous conversation regarding student enrollment numbers and do a trend assessment at that time. There were no actions from the committee for board action.
Thank you, Lisa. Any questions for Lisa?
I do have a question. I was wondering, it says the detailed contract by contract review will not be part of the Finance Committee's meetings. Can you explain that to me, please, Lisa?
Yeah, so the question came up at the end as we were talking about what are the next meetings, what are we going to cover at the next committees? And there was a question about wanting to do a contract by contract review as a Finance Committee meeting, and that's not board work. That's personal interest work. That's work that our licensed and professional staff would do. So I think some of it, if not much of it's been requested publicly in data requests, has been pulled together for that, but that's not the work of the governance of the committee, so that would not be committee work.
How is our outlook looking for that budget then? You're saying that the adopted budget assumptions are
Well, I can let Jen jump in, but that's the one that we did the budget cuts for, right? That we just experienced. I mean, so this is where I look back at my federal professional project management experience, and I really feel fortunate, the ability to hold 3 fiscal years in your head at the same time. So the budget cut work that was done, or budget adjustment work that was done, and engagement of, middle school fees and staffing changes, that change is what's being incorporated into next year's budget along with the enrollment projections. Jen, I don't know if you want to give a preview.
Well, and hopefully it's not a surprise because we talked about a lot of this. So Becky, I'm gonna share this with you really quick, and then you can just pull up the last page. Sorry, it just takes me 1 second. All right, you should get it. And then if you don't mind just going right to the last page. So this is the presentation that we covered in the meeting, but the last page is just kind of a quick summary. So we talked through the assumptions, and the initial 22-23 budget is being created right now, utilizing that. The assumptions will continue to be updated as additional information becomes available, and other smaller budgets are still being analyzed for potential updates. But as we go back to that budget adjustment process, at that time we said the anticipated deficit for 22-23 would be 1.3 million. There was an additional 300,000 for the reinstated contribution to the technology set aside. And then through the budget adjustments, there was an additional 50,000 in revenue for increasing the middle school athletics and activities fees. There were right-sizing adjustments that accounted for about 521,000. And then there was the 1 FTE of the secondary programming reduction for about 78,000. So at the end of the budget adjustment process, we had planned to be at a deficit of about 950,000. And the current working budget, including the assumptions, is currently at 974. So it's pretty close, but it's not final yet. It's just a working budget at this point. So we'll review that adopted budget in May at the Finance Committee, and then it will come to the board for approval in June. Does that help?
Thank you, Jen. Appreciate that.
I just wanted to add one point of information. Regarding Jessica's question, going back, so the request was mine. I had asked, I guess I wasn't asking for a detailed contract by contract review. I am looking for an overview of contracted companies, especially high dollar contracts, and just understanding why we contract with the companies, what services they provide. So I will be meeting with Jen one-on-one to cover that.
Yeah, and again, I would honestly, I'd stand by the statement that type of review isn't board work. The board work is to say we would like this work done. We would like the work of the school district done, and the administrative team makes the decision based on resource allocation. Is that best done with in-house resources or contract resources? But individual questions, I guess, if you want to do that as a data request or do that as for personal information, that's the piece. So I think it's just that constant challenge of saying, you know, setting the course and then allowing the work within the district to be done by the people that are responsible to do the work. And it's just that finding that, it's that constant stressor point of finding that.
Yeah, and I guess I can understand that, but ultimately, the 7 of us are responsible for every penny spent in this district. And so when we're talking about going out and asking taxpayers for bonds and levies, I want to make sure that I understand or have at least a basic understanding of where the money is going and whatnot. So that's my comfort level overall.
Okay, thanks for the input from everyone on that. Let's move to, our finance committee's done, so let's move to our action items. First on here is our consent agenda that's got a number of change orders, personnel report, the ALC recommendations, which we talked about earlier, locker privacy that was also mentioned. So to start with, I need a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor, first of all, is there any discussion on the consent agenda? Start there.
I would like to request that we pull out the high school locker privacy. I'd like to highlight the good news that's contained in that report.
All right, so we'll be pulling out the high school locker privacy recommendation.
Discuss it right now.
Yeah, we can, absolutely.
We kind of did last time by moving the money out.
Yeah, but we can discuss it. We can discuss it now, or we can move it out and discuss it in a moment. So.
Yeah, I just wanted to point out that there are some massive savings there with some changes that were made to the design, and so we are saving. I think it was a 60% reduction in the expense. So that's awesome. I guess I'm just curious. There's a general comment about design changes being made, and I'm just wondering if you could get a general or a general commentary about what exactly was changed, because that's awesome. That's a significant improvement.
So I know we've got, I can speak to it a little bit of just in general, but I know we've got Cam and Sal here. So both of them are involved with us in these type of changes. But the overview is when you don't have to dig as much into existing walls, and you don't have to add as much plumbing, and you don't have to change as much electrical, the prices go down extremely in an extreme fashion.
Yeah, so essentially how the budget was set was a major renovation of the current there's kind of a core of plumbing intensive area in the locker rooms that's got the toilets and the showers. And so the budget was set to really fundamentally reimagine that for both sets of locker rooms. And as we started meeting with the administration, so the principal and the athletic director, there were some concerns that if we proceeded with that scope, that enhanced privacy requires going to full walls instead of like a toilet partition. And so that distance actually starts to add up, and you actually might lose a toilet or a shower in that. And there was a priority put on kind of whatever we do, can we please not lose showers, because they're in high demand. And so that kind of sent the drawing team back to the design team back to the drawing board. And so we worked with the administration to come up with a solution that we created kind of in where some lockers are today. We're losing, I don't know, maybe 10 lockers, 12 lockers, a low number of lockers. They said we'd rather lose 12 lockers than lose 1 to 2 showers. And so we were able to, instead of renovating maybe 500 or 600 square feet in each locker room, we're actually renovating like 150 square feet and making a single user room that's got a toilet, a shower, and a sink in it. And so there's an option for enhanced privacy if people are uncomfortable with the the setup that's there today, but we actually end up adding a shower on each side instead of losing. So, but your big picture statement of had to dig up a lot less sanitary sewer was like the primary driver of cost. So.
Thanks, I appreciate that.
Yeah.
And that's great because it's just a question. That's an efficient way to handle it than try to move it off and have a separate vote when we really didn't need to. Can you do me a favor and stay put just in case, because then you just have to get up again and those chairs are more comfortable anyway, let's be honest. Okay. So is there any other discussion on the consent agenda? Seeing none, I am looking for did we motion on this one? We did, right? Okay. Looking for a vote in favor of the consent agenda. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? A consent agenda passes. Moving forward, that gets us to items for individual action, correct? Okay. Starting with bills payable. Okay, so as you guys know, bills pulled out is a separate item here. And I need a motion to approve the bills payable.
So moved.
Second.
Is there any discussion on bills payable?
I'm just wondering if there's any abnormal expenses for the month.
Yes.
So there are not any abnormal expenses for the month, and we would not include any in the bills payable. So if it was abnormal, it's something that we would hold and bring forward to the board separately. I can tell you that all the bills that are in here have followed the district's policies, which include expenditure approval by an authorized staff member, review of invoice documentation by our accounts payable staff for appropriateness and accuracy, as well as review by our finance supervisor. So if there's any specific expenditures that you'd like information on, I'm more than happy to provide it, but we would not include abnormal expenditures in the bills payable.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Let's move to our vote for the bills payable, right? Yep. All in favor of the bills payable with those questions being answered, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Bills payable passes. Moves us to the combined polling places resolution.
Yeah, so, and Becky, if you want to pull that up when you get a chance. So as a result of the redistricting, we're required to reread and pass our combined polling places due to how the redistricting impacted our southern county. So we're in 3 different counties, and so 2 of the counties were not impacted at all, but our southern county was, and so that county requires us then to reapprove this. Nothing changes from what was before. It's the exact same resolution. It just needs to be done as a resolution.
Thank you for that explanation. So that being said, I do need a motion to, for the resolution to be read and voted on. I don't. Oh, that's right, because you're going to read it. I always forget resolutions work differently. I apologize. Go ahead, Becky.
I, Becky Beisel, introduce the following resolutions and move for its adoption as it has been written. A resolution establishing combined polling places for multiple presence and designating hours during which the polling places will remain open for voting for school district elections not held on the day of the statewide election. Do I have a second for a motion?
Second.
And a roll call vote, those in favor. Becky Beisel, yes. Lisa Hedin?
Yes.
Jessica Dressley?
Yes.
Mike Reese?
Yes.
Carrie Tate?
Yes.
Stephanie Malm?
No.
Brian Davis?
Yes.
Thereupon, the said resolution has been declared duly passed and adopted.
Thank you very much for getting that done. Okay, let's move on to the school district calendar, please.
All right, so we have before you the, at the last board meeting, we ran through the district calendars, the proposed calendar for the final calendar for this year, as well as the final calendar for the subsequent years. There were no changes between last month and this month, and so the calendars that are on here are what was presented by Kathy Mullen and Rachel Larson, and so now we're asking the board to approve those two calendars.
We do have to do these separately, though, since they're listed separately, correct? Or can we do them combined?
That's correct. You do them separately.
That's what I thought. Okay, so I need a motion to approve the 2022-23 school district calendar.
So move.
Second.
All those in favor of the school district calendar for 22-23 signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? 22-23 school district calendar is passed. 23-24 school district calendar. I need a motion to approve that calendar.
So move.
Second.
All in favor of approval of 23-24 school district calendar, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That calendar passes. Great. Next on our agenda is policy 403 and policy 540. These are the ones that Stephanie referred to earlier, having to do with disproportionate, enrollment policy, counseling, pre-career, and technical programs removal. I need a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion on this one? It's a little bit trickier, so I just want to make sure. Okay. All those in favor of this piece, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? That passes. Moving forward, we're now up to the lawful owner representative proposal. I need a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion on the lawful construction and consulting proposal? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
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 Those opposed? That passes. We now move to a resolution of a non-renewing coaching contract that Becky's going to have to read.
I, Becky Beisel, introduced the following resolution and moved its adoption as it has been written. Whereas, I read the whole thing, right?
Yep.
Resolution non-renewing coaching contract.
There you go.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Stephanie Malm seconded the motion to adoption this resolution, and the following board members voted in favor of the resolution. Becky Beisel, yes. Lisa Hadeen?
Yes.
Jessica Dressley?
Yes.
Mike Reese?
Yes.
Carrie Tate?
Yes.
Stephanie Malm?
Yes.
Brian Davis?
Yes.
And based on the vote, this resolution is declared duly passed and adopted.
All right, that moves us to school board committees, policy 213 that got moved forward earlier. I need a motion to approve.
So moved. Second.
Any discussion on this? Probably already discussed it. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Passes. That brings us to our future meetings, which are available, of course, on the website. A particular interest are the next few, the Finance Committee. Oh, sorry, I'm going a little too far back in time. We've got community engagement that's next week. Then we'll have a policy committee meeting on the 7th. Then we'll have a special board meeting closed session on the 13th. And then we have a retreat coming up in mid-April. So lots of fun stuff coming up. Fun for all.
Question on that?
Yes, sir.
For the closed one, is that's based off of some of those emails that you had sent us about the high level and your review and stuff for that? Was that?
Yeah, so the closed session will be what's considered the mid-year evaluation for the superintendent.
I'll be sending communications out to all of you about that in some detail, and so that's a closed session as such. So we've gone over the future meetings. If there is nothing else, then I need a motion for us to adjourn. No, they were sitting there in case there was questions about the Loeffler contract, just in case. No, I'm really. And put in the comfortable chairs. Thanks for checking in on that, Mike. So I just need a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed. Meeting's adjourned.